So I won't lie, a lot has happened. I've moved cities in this past few weeks. I've lost quite a few equipment in said move and burned through a couple hard drives, which means that I have actually lost the audio for the next 3 episodes. So what I figured I'd do, since things do get a little slow in these episodes, is take a little time to talk about, state of the industry, state of life, and see what people are getting interested in order to, while I talk over this gameplay. Since I seem to be having a lot of trouble actually surmounting this hill in any sort of meaningful way. So, why don't we just go over the news for the last couple of weeks, because I feel like we missed a bunch. In the last couple of weeks, we have missed the Xbox and revealing the Xbox One, which is a terrible, terrible name. We have missed a big feminist push by Anita Sarkeesian and a couple other people. What else have we missed? We've missed... The thing that we haven't missed are new games coming out, because it's been pretty dry over the past few days, past few weeks. So I guess let's just go through it. So the Xbox One, the press conference that Microsoft gave, is pretty terrible. Like, just a lot of talking about nothing, a lot of showing things about secondary media standards that ultimately no one's really going to care about. It was a weird decision to front load that entire thing with how this box incorporates with television, especially when, in the end of the day, it looks like it's little more than a secondary DVR. Like, I don't understand how people would really get the most out of this beyond using, a Roku box, or, a box with MCE on it, or with, any sort of, like, free DVR program. And that's the weird thing. It's like, it's all it is a pass-through. It's an access pass-through for your cable box using HDMI in, which means that, just getting it to communicate with your existing cable box, or your television, or your receiver, or anything that you have in your living room is going to be a pain in the butt. Like, it means that they're going to be doing IR blasters, and that stuff is so random and vague. I have to use an IR blaster at work for capturing television, and it is the biggest pain. Yep, that's death number one. And it's the biggest pain because basically I have to have it communicate between a cable box, a TiVo, 2 computers, and our cable feed, all working independently of one another. And it never works perfectly. So all of a sudden, imagine that you're now fighting with this thing in order to get any sort of reasonable connectivity with your setup, with your existing setup. I don't see the point or the merit in trying to do that. I know having Xbox be, part of your cable provider, when that was the big rumor, when it was like they need to team up with Comcast, or Rogers in Canada, or Verizon, like major cable companies. So it's an actual cable box. It's got a cable card, and if you do that, then the system can parse the signal on its own. It doesn't have to communicate with anything else. It just becomes your set-top box, your actual set-top box. But that's not what they're doing. I don't really know what they're doing, because right now, with the way that it stands, there are so many caveats to what they showed that it doesn't really make sense for them to get everybody so worked up about what they're doing with television. Like, it's a real kind of slapdash thing that really doesn't have a great chance of succeeding. Especially if they're not looking to partner up with anybody. I was expecting totally full partnerships with everybody in the US, everybody in the UK, and, because they have all those cable partners for existing apps right now, by hook or by crook. So it would make sense that they would want to just give them the hardware, Kicks. It would make sense to want to give them the hardware and just say, go with it. Here's what we have. Have fun. But at the end of the day, they just... It doesn't seem like they're going to even try to do that. It's really, really strange. I mean, granted, they have E3 to get this all nailed down, and the fallout afterwards, where it's like you got Don Matrix saying one thing about stuff that nobody should be talking about yet, and then you have other people saying, no, that's not the way it is, but your boss's boss just told the mass media that's how it is. It's a weird thing, man. It's a super weird thing. But I don't have a whole lot of confidence in what they've shown thus far. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to do most of the things that they're doing. It feels like they're putting all this emphasis on mass media and sort of trying to shy away from games and telling pretty much what Capcom and Square and Sony have been saying, which is please be excited for E3, which at this point is basically in 2 weeks. But you really need to show what you're doing differently that is not just superfluous stuff that people may or may not use. Because ultimately, when that stuff is so thin and so unexplained and is so full of holes, and apparently so scripted, none of that stuff that they showed at that press conference was actually live. Not that I don't think anybody was expecting it to be. But when it's that scripted, it doesn't mean anything. Like, all of that stuff is subject to change. So when it's that subject to change, it sort of negates the whole purpose of having a press conference to begin with. I know they had to do a response to Sony, and I know they wanted to get all their stuff out there and, get people in a fervor for everything. But, man, it's ultimately doing that and not showing anything of real meaning just kind of wasted everybody's time. I mean, it's great that they announced Forza 5, not that we didn't see that coming, and it's great that EA said, hey, we're making games for this, even though we knew that they were going to. It's a weird thing where they really don't have to, or it's not that they don't have to, they really should have focused more on what the console can do, even if that meant focusing more on apps or more on services that they want to put out. None of the big questions got answered, and what's really vexing to me is that most of the big answers probably won't get answered at E3 either. Like, will Xbox Live still require a paid membership to use apps like Netflix or Hulu and that stuff? They sort of alluded to afterwards that everybody would be able to create their own apps, which isn't the way that it is now on Xbox 360. Right now, Microsoft has to create everybody's apps, which is why Facebook and Twitter failed dramatically on the Xbox 360. It's like the problem that I have with the press conference is they focus on so much dumb stuff that doesn't mean anything. That they forgot that they have this whole big ecosystem with Xbox Live and basically their whole app infrastructure and how they're building that into Windows 8 and how they're looking to flesh it out and how they're looking to have parity between everything. And believe me, it's everything. They want, they want Windows things to be in every area because that makes sense so they can corner the market. And they did a bad job of trying to show why you would want to use all of your peripherals, your phone, your laptop, your tablet, with your Xbox at the same time. And it's funny that they say that they had this press conference so they can get all the boring stuff in the that would be at an E3 presser out of the way, because ultimately they're still going to have to confront that stuff at the E3 presser. Which means that they really didn't save any time. They just wasted everybody's hour talking about television. I mean, it's not a great presser. And nothing was really convincing, and at the end of the day, they didn't really convince anybody of anything. So, ultimately, why even bother? It's kind of a bummer. But, I mean, that being said, I will definitely, be there watching E3 from wherever I am at the time, it sounds... I want to try to get a house party together for all the E3 stuff, because it seems like all the major press conferences are going to be on one day, and if that's the case, then we might as well just like have a party. We might as well just enjoy ourselves. It's too bad it's during the week. If it's during the weekend, it would be a no-brainer. But that being said, I mean, we'll have to see. There's so much negativity around Xbox One right now. Most of it's pretty justified for people who are, you know, consumer conscious and really don't want to get taken for a ride. But at the same time, you kind of hope that Microsoft has been doing this for long enough where they should understand how all this stuff works. And all we can really do is hope that they do. At this point, it's 15 years in the console game. You kind of hope that they have an inkling of how to do this stuff. So, getting back to Dragon's Dogma, since we are past the point where I kept dying over. This is one of the weird missions that when I originally did it on my first playthrough, it was kind of bizarre because I just happened across these dudes, and like, this is one of the big bummer areas of Dragon's Dogma, because you get down here and it's like thieves' encampment, and it's cool, it's different from what you've been seeing, it's big, broken down, like sort of like gothic fortress. But you get here and nothing is really happening. There's a whole bunch of treasure and there's a whole bunch of dudes, but you can't talk to the dudes, even though they're not hostile towards you when you go in. They're not hostile towards you until you actually confront them, and as you know, we're doing this mission to retrieve the Grimorum with something for a side quest. But there should be more here. Like, this is kind of an interesting area, and it all falls back into the idea of, like, with most games like this, you would have a couple hub areas where you can get various quests and stuff like that. But in this game, it really is just Grand Soren, and that's kind of a bummer, especially because there's so much like care put into making this place sort of like multi-tiered and make it seem like a real hideout. But at the end of the day, there's nothing to do here except slaughter everybody who lives here, which we have done. So you'll have to forgive me. I recorded this quite a while ago, but I have forgotten pretty much everything that I've done. So now I am looking for the stairs. Yeah. So the Grimorum is at the top floor here, and there's a weird broken down staircase that I seem to miss every time I come here. But once we get that, we will peel out of here, and I think we go and try and find some extra game, because it's getting dark, and the beasties come out at night, as they say. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like, this game is really cool, but there is a staunch lack of life in it. Like, it's a pretty nice big world that has, that's pretty, it could have a little bit more color, but that's limitations of the console, whatever. Yeah, that's not any good. I gotta sell all this crap when I get back to Grand Soren. But it's kind of a bummer, just because there really needs to be more in this world to make it feel alive. And that's the biggest problem that Dragon Dogma has. It doesn't feel alive. It kind of stinks. But that being said, you get used to it, and you persevere. And when you do that, you find all the good stuff, which is mostly the combat. So moving through here, I don't honestly remember what this element's Grimoire is for. I know you can give it to the dude, and if you do, it's great. You get a little bit of XP, but I feel like it's something important that you need it for. But for the life of me, I can't remember what. It might not be anything. But that being said, you still just want to make sure that you keep on to it. So what we're going to do is, when we get back to Grand Soren, which I think will be in a little while, good job, I'm going to talk to the dude that runs the Black Cat, and basically what he can do is he can make forgeries of special items, and I will have him make a forgery of the book, and I will give the forgery to our quest giver, and he will provide us with what we need, which is the XP and the whatnots. Oof. Death from above! Nice. I love that. That's so cool. Magic Archer is such a cool thing. Like, Magic Archer, I feel like there's nothing else in it in other games. There's nothing else like it. And granted, it does make the game really easy, because basically it's homing. It's sort of, if you're a mage, it's sort of the easy button, because basically, the bows that I've found anyway, for magic users, are so strong. Like, it sort of negates the need to use traditional spells. Like, in all my playthroughs, I don't think I ever really sat down and wanted to ever be a standalone mage or a standalone sorceress. Because there's a lot of waiting around, and it's a lot of adapting to what other people are doing. When I say other people, I mean, like, your own crew. And the AI in this game isn't fantastic. So I always want to be in the thick of it, in the fray, and let the AI adapt to whatever I have to do. So we're saving our game, because we need to get back, and it's getting dark, and there's a whole bunch of stuff hanging around here. And God knows in this game you can get sideswiped by something huge at any moment. But that's a lot of the fun of it. But at the same time, this game doesn't do checkpointing, like, at all. Or it does, but not very well. So you want to save early so And here's another one of these random quests where you have to go and rescue the captured person from the cage by killing all the mobs, and it's like, It's weird that these are the random things that you come across, because you always see the cages never go away, but they're never populated unless it's like at night and at random times. It's really strange. But that being said, not a big deal. We move on, we persevere, and I think we see some... Man, there's one dude hanging out somewhere. Yeah. There he is. Bleh. And I think we see some Sorens. For trouble hanging out by the water. So, yeah, we did that, and we go forth, and it's like, okay, sure, great, but, you know, whatever. I slaughtered a cow. And yes, it doesn't really matter that we're easily spotted out in the open plains, because there's nothing here right now. Except Saurian. Like, another problem that I have with this game, that it's a weird one, it's like, it's not really a problem. It's just, another thing where you can see the seams of the game that this was originally going to be, but had to, corners had to be cut in order to get this out on time. Like, the crafting is so bizarre, and granted, I've skipped all of the crafting because the crafting is truly boring, and I'm sure nobody actually wants to sit there and watch me craft for, 10 or 20 minutes. But it's like, you get all this stuff, but you can't really make anything. You can only sort of give it to people who can enhance your stuff, which leads you to having a massive amount of stored items that do nothing. And it's kind of a bummer, like, you can see the blacksmith at Gransmore, and you can see, like, there's a ton of side missions that clearly were, originally a little bit more populated than they are, with going out with people to go get something where, and they're all like that. It kind of makes you wish that you could still do stuff, like getting special weapons and enhancing special weapons. It doesn't feel as cohesive as it does even in games with bad combat. Like, I hate to keep going back to it, but Skyrim, which is a game that has bad combat, or tolerable combat. It's combat that you fight through in order to see the rest of the game. Like, it's really easy to wrap your head around the crafting system in that game. And granted, you can break the game wide open via crafting. Ooh, wolves. Big wolves. But at the same time, it's still just this thing where, like, it doesn't really, like, it tells you very specifically, this is how you craft, this is what you need to do to make your weapons better. So you don't have to worry. But in this game, it feels like it... Oh. Oof. Got that combo. Yeah, this is me playing real fast and loose. It's sloppy play, admittedly. Admittedly. This will not be a speed run in any way, shape, or form. But, yeah, it's like... The things that you could do in order to enhance your weapons could be a little better than go out and find 5 of this item, 3 of that item, and 4 of that item, and then come back to me, and I'll make it better. Especially when item drops are pretty random. It's just one of those things that is a little bizarre. But at the end of the day, there's nothing you can really do about it or say about it. It's just how this game works. And I hope for, you know, Dragon's Dogma 2 or Dragon's Dogma Deep Down, whatever the code word is for that game at this point, I hope they manage to fix that. Because there's so much good, but so many little things that just need to be enhanced and fixed. But we won't know until 2015, something like that. Capcom's release schedule ever since their fiscal... And that's something we can talk about. You know, their fiscal announcements were not great. And it's weird because Capcom is really strange about backpedaling and blaming things for 1 second and then, you know, realizing what's actually happening and then saying another. It's kind of silly. Like... I feel like back in March they were worried because DMC just came out and they were worried that it was going to fail because it had a lot of bad press and bad presence with the market. But it still sold well, and it still turned out to be a good game. And, you know, it's still on its way to making its estimated sales, which I think at this point was 3.4 million. I mean, it might not hit it until November, but that's kind of okay. If you're talking about over its lifespan, if you're only expecting 3.4 million, and let's say it hits 4 by next February, that's still a win for you. It's a mining area. Nuclear option! I love it when they call in the nukes for no reason. That's a pretty spell. It's a pretty spell. But yeah, it's like, and they keep saying we don't want to outsource anymore because people don't like it when we outsource. But at the same time, when they outsource, they usually get a pretty good product. Dead Rising was fine. Dead Rising 2 was better because they outsourced. Well, yeah, because they outsourced. DMC was fine. I mean, the real problem is if you're worried about outsourcing, like Lost Planet 3, that's where you got to put your worries on. Like, I played Lost Planet 3 at PAX, and it was terrible. Like, it was really, really bad. Like, it feels like a subpar Dead Space. Like, everything that was interesting or cool about the original Lost Planet has been taken out. Like, at least from what I played, the demo that I played, like, all of the really cool, like, play with the grappling hook is gone. Like, the way that the weapons work is completely different. The way that you aim and move is completely different. The way you jump around is completely different, and like most importantly, like the way that the mechs work, the way your robot warfare, like it's basically been like dumbed down to QTEs, which is terrible. Like the best thing about that game was like being able to be like a dude, just like scouring across like rooftops with like a rocket launcher, with another guy on the opposite team in a mech like shooting at you. They can't quite hit you because you're so far away. You just get the perfect spot and you just launch that missile. You take them all out, and it's amazing. It's super cool. But that's all gone, and that super sucks. Like, it's really, really annoying, and it's really, really sad. I love Lost Planet. I played a lot of Lost Planet when the 360 first came out, and I actually like Lost Planet 2 a lot too. But I mean, it has fundamental issues. That's a game that was made for online multiplayer, and the online netcode doesn't work at all. So you run into this problem where it's like you're trying to get a game, you're trying to get a game. Like I think I only really had a few good sessions playing Lost Planet 2 because after the first 3 days, I literally could never connect to a party again. Like every time I would try, it would wait for like 20 minutes and then crash. I don't have that problem with any other games. I have great ping with every other game out there. It was just that game. And it was a pain. So it meant like I played through the game with a dedicated group of 3 once. I'm about to take the shortcut to Celine's house. But I played through that game with a dedicated group of 3 people once, and then literally could never play it with anybody ever again, and that game sucks in single player. So I never wanted to do anything with that game after it came out. It's too bad, because I thought that game was a lot of fun while it was there. But I don't know. I guess Capcom. Oh, here are some ghosts. This is our first ghost enemies in the game. But our magic is so high, we're just eviscerating them. How do you eviscerate a ghost? Well, like that, I guess. But yeah, it was such a bummer because it was really that series was really good. And then you have stuff like EX Troopers, or I think that's the name of it, like EX Storms, or the Japanese game that basically took all the Mega Man Legends 3 information that they ended up canceling and repurposed it into a Lost Planet game, but then decided not to put out in America because lol, people don't like Lost Planet, right? No, you idiots. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me why they would take an action game that apparently is halfway decent and just not release it in America because they don't think it's going to sell. Of course it'll sell. And if you're worried about the brick and mortar cost for it, just put it on a 3DS store. Like, it literally makes no sense to me, and it's really infuriating how they just sort of assume that this stuff isn't going to sell and then complain about the entire market when they don't have any money. It's bizarre. And no other business works this way. It's annoying. But yeah, and their answer is, yeah, just outsource it. We'll get Western people to make the game they want. Oh, stop. I think I did it again. Yeah, and their answer is just outsource it. We'll get Western people to make a Western shooter, so Western people will play this Western game. But that's not the point. East or West, it doesn't matter. It's about making a game that's compelling to gamers, no matter where you are. Now, granted, there are certain cultural respects that need to be taken into consideration, but it's not. The answer isn't taking this game that had a completely unique feel from anything else out there, regardless of East or West, and just turn it into another generic shooter. Like, that's exactly what you don't want to do. And, I don't know, it's so frustrating the way that Capcom works. Like, I mean, they just announced that basically there's not going to be another Darkstalkers because Darkstalkers Resurrection sold so poorly. And I'm like, at the same time, you got to remember, Darkstalkers hasn't had a game, like a full game, since, what, the PSP? And that was just a re-release of 2 and 3, I think. And, like, the thing that people forget about Darkstalkers is Darkstalkers, as a fighting game, is extremely difficult to play. Like, it is very, very... Like, the controls are very, very tight. It's a lot of very complex button inputs for special moves. It's a lot of high strategy, and a lot of those characters like QB or certain elements of John Talbane or Jeddah are just super OP and like pretty dominating every time. So it's hard for people to really get behind it. Like, none of those games have the sensibilities that have been built into modern fighting games over the past couple years. So it's really hard for people who are mediocre or subpar at fighting games to get into Darkstalkers. Like, basically, like, most of the people that I know who like Darkstalkers got into it because of the artwork. It was staunchly different from what was coming out at the time. It was sexy, it was dirty, it was bloody. There was nothing else like it. Like even like Mortal Kombat, which was kind of, the off factor at the time, was so much different than Darkstalkers, just visually and the way that it played. So it's really hard to say with any certainty that putting out this game, this HD re-release, is gonna is gonna make people tell whether or not people actually want a new 3D or new next gen, current gen Darkstalkers game, and it's not a good barometer. Like, you can't tell if people are gonna want a new Street Fighter game by putting out Street Fighter Alpha 3. People want a Street Fighter Alpha 3 because people like Street Fighter Alpha 3. And not as many people played Darkstalkers when they were kids. I mean, that game was hard to find, and it was in the weird era of Saturn versus PS1. Like, it didn't play great on the PS1, and very few people had the Saturn. Like, I had a Saturn, but I could never find Darkstalkers. I don't know if Darkstalkers ever came out in America on the Saturn. I think it was a Japan-only thing. So you run into this whole big thing where it's like, you have all these games that were the building blocks of what we have today, and you try to put them out there thinking, oh, people really like Marvel 3, so people will buy, the origins of Marvel 3. So they'll buy Marvel 1 and, what is it, Marvel Superheroes, I think, the Marvel fighting game. And those games aren't the same thing. They're very different, so people don't, quite gel with it. People are more interested in playing, what's the new hotness, or the quote-unquote new hotness, or what we consider to be our new industry standard. And people get behind stuff like Marvel 2 for nostalgia's sake, and a lot of people played like Marvel 2. I know tons of people that played Marvel 2 when I was growing up. Like, we had a full-on arcade scene. We had a Marvel 2 machine next to the DDR machine. It was everybody played it. I can't say the same thing about Marvel vs. Capcom 1 because it was such a different experience. I mean, I saw a couple machines at a couple bowling alleys and things like that, but in our local arcades, we never had a Marvel 1 machine ever.
I'd not believe such villainy could be found.
So it was weird. It was like a thing that you only saw and you knew about it, but you could never get good at it. So, 20 years later, 15 years later, like, it's weird to ask people to really get excited over the quote-unquote origins of Marvel 2 and Marvel 1, or sorry, Marvel 2 and Marvel 3 in this package. Now, granted, it wasn't expensive, and, if you like fighting games, it would be cool to dive into, but there's nobody who's going to sit there and devote a whole ton of time to getting super, super, super good at Marvel 1 when Marvel 3 is still on the corner. And when you have other fighting games, I mean, Injustice was on the corner. People are still playing Mortal Kombat 9, and people are still playing Blaze Blue and Guilty Gear. Well, not Guilty Gear, unfortunately. But we'll talk about that in a minute, too. They're still playing all the other fighting games that are current. Like, it's weird that Capcom would expect people to buy into the origins of a fighting game when there are new current fighting games out there who are looking for a slice of the pie that are finding it extremely difficult. Like, Skullgirls is still trying to cut a swath out of everything, fighting game based. And granted, they have the fan base. I am in that fan base. I really, really like Skullgirls. But there's not a whole lot of people playing it right now. And it's kind of unfortunate. And that company's having some financial woes, but they still managed to get that DLC stuff up. And their DLC drive was amazing to watch. It was super fun. Like, just watching them go and crowdsource DLC and to really like lay the smackdown on everybody's preconceptions of what DLC is and how much it costs to implement, and really letting people know how it is and not what they thought it was. Like, a lot of people were surprised when they asked for $200,000 and then they put a real detailed breakdown to this is 200, or this is 20,000, this is 30,000, this is 5,000, this is 10,000. It was really, really informative and really, really interesting, and it got a lot of people thinking about what actually needs to go into video games to keep them alive longer. And I'm kind of surprised that it hadn't happened earlier, but at the same time, if you think about at least staying in the fighting game regime, Capcom doesn't have a good relationship with its fans. It's tried, but their community manager is often putting out the fires that are set by the Japanese branch management. That there's not really a good opportunity to get really close with your fan base. It's why I feel terribly bad for Sven Christensen, the current leader of Capcom Unity, which is their fan portal, because he has the worst job in the world. I mean, Seth Killian, that dude did it for years, and I don't understand how. But it's this weird thing where they don't want to talk to people about that stuff. So it's really cool that Lab Zero could come around and really break it down for people and explain why DLC stuff is so problematic, and why it at least gives you more like insight into why Capcom does stupid shit like on the DLC, and why their time frames, their schedules are so really poor, like, and why they don't want to do patches even when they should do patches. Like Cross Tekken took forever to get its patch. Marvel 3 won't be patched because Capcom doesn't care about Marvel 3 anymore. At this point, really, Capcom wants to put out another fighter. They're just waiting until they can make Marvel 4, which they won't, but they'll do like Marvel Fighting Jam or something like that for the Xbox One and the PS4, and hopefully the PC. I mean, they did pretty good by the PC for Cross Tekken, even though those patches and that DLC took forever to come out over there. Like, they need to do a little bit better on that stuff, but they are at least trying, and that's really good. Like Mortal Kombat 9 is getting its complete edition on the PC pretty soon, and I'm interested in diving into that. But at the same time, it's they could do a little bit more. But that being said, it's fine. They want to put out a new game because that's where the money is, and that's where they can gather up hype for. They can restart the hype cycle. They can get people, energized for another round again, and that'll be fun. The hype, people forget the old days when Marvel 3 was still being announced, and people like Loop and Co. was leaking characters out to people, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's lying. That's crazy. Why would Tianko be in this game? That's such pie in the sky. It would be awesome if she was, but there's no way she will be." And it's stuff like that. That's really fun. And it would be really cool to have that to start that over again. And in the meantime, we have Marvel 3, and Marvel 3 is still going strong, even though it needs to be patched. And and Guilty Gear X3 finally just got announced, and I will tell you, man, Unreal Engine. Like, somebody give Daisuke Ishiwatari an award, because that boy has done the impossible. He has taken the Unreal Engine and made it like clean and vibrant and colorful and beautiful and really, really amazing looking. I never would have said that the Unreal Engine could be a beautiful thing, but man, I was wrong. And he did some great things. It'll be interesting to see if he goes forward using Unreal 3, which he probably will, because, he probably wants to get this thing out for 2014. Or if he goes up to Unreal 4, because that'll be ready. Or, the beta stuff is already out there, so he could use that. And there is no real Unreal 4 until Epic releases a game on it. That's how they always roll with their engines, but I really want to see more of that game, because it is so pretty. It's so pretty. We got 4. It's like we already know that Saul and Kai and Milia and Eddie are in it, and I'm like, all right, that's pretty good. Show me Faust, show me Bai, and I am cool. You don't even have to have anybody else, and you can just bring in all new characters after then. Super excited. But yeah, it's we know. I don't know. It's a weird thing where people are doing okay. To get back to what we were originally talking about, Capcom is doing okay, but they need to straighten up and fly right, because if they keep adhering to this weird 90s mentality of this is how we would create video games, they're just going to get blown out of the water. And I think that's
So it
something that
was
everybody
no,
pretty much
what,
agrees
what,
on,
what?
except for Capcom. And they keep finding themselves in bad places every damn time. But that being said, you know, we're still in a good shape. Like we're getting into new console hype, and it'll be a lot of fun to see what comes out of it. So, I mean, I really, really hope that there's some really cool stuff from all the Japanese developers out there for the Xbox One
Well
for
met,
next
good
year.
arisen.
And I know
If a
that there's a
heartening
big
wound
hype
have
on
your-
both
I
the
will not keep
PS4
you
and
long.
the
They walk fast
the
through
Xbox
ruins
One,
of halls.
the
I know
Xbone,
not what
excuse me,
crave.
the Xbone. I mean, Microsoft says they have 15 games coming out, and I don't necessarily believe them. But we'll see. I mean, 2 weeks. 2 weeks is all we need to wait, and after we wait then, we'll be straight. So, I think right now, in the game, I'm going to turn in this quest, and after that, I am just waiting for my forgery to go through. And as soon as my forgery goes through, we'll give it to him, we'll cash out the quest. Oh, actually, I think we're going to pick up the new quest now. Yes, we are.
The gods do have much to worry about.
Yeah, so, if we're talking to Joffrey, well, that means we are headed towards the aquatic ruins. Bow now, now, now. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo. But that means we are headed off to the third and possibly the third of the first tier quests, which means we are well on our way in this game, and which means that we are going to have to carry lots of heavy things. So why don't we take our break here, and we'll come back in a little while.